What if a 4-year-old girl wakes up screaming in a language she never learned? What if she draws mushroom clouds before knowing what they are? What if her memories belong to a teacher who died in Hiroshima 71 years before she was born? This is the case of Emily Carter, a girl from Portland, Oregon, who carries the trauma of the brightest light ever seen by human eyes. And her journey would lead her family across the world to find the truth written in ashes. There is no greater mystery than this. Part 1. The Nightmares That Spoke in Japanese. February 2016. Portland, Oregon. Jennifer and Michael Carter noticed something unusual about their daughter from the very beginning. The first sign came when Emily was only 3 years old. 11:15 at night. Every single night, without fail, Emily would wake up screaming. Not the normal cry of a child having a bad dream. This was terror. This was agony. This was a scream that seemed to come from somewhere ancient, somewhere deep, somewhere that had no business existing in a 3-year-old child. Jennifer would run into Emily's room, her heart pounding, and always find the same scene. Emily sitting up in bed, eyes wide open, but not seeing, not really seeing, looking at something invisible, something that only she could perceive, and speaking words that Jennifer did not understand. The little girl would whisper, tears streaming down her face. Mizu, onagai. Mi. Jennifer would hold her daughter close, trying to comfort her. It's okay, sweetie. It's just a dream. Mommy's here. You're safe. But Emily wouldn't respond. She would continue murmuring in that strange language, her small body trembling, her hands clutching at invisible things in the air. After 15 minutes, sometimes 20, Emily would finally fall silent. Her eyes would close. She would collapse against her mother's chest, exhausted. And Jennifer would sit there in the darkness, holding her sleeping daughter, wondering what nightmares could possibly cause such terror in someone so young. The pattern continued for weeks, then months. Every single night. 11:15. Exactly. Michael, a high school history teacher, was the first to notice the precision of the timing. He began documenting it, recording the exact moments Emily would wake screaming. 11:15 p.m. Pacific Time. Every single night. One evening, after yet another nightmare, Michael sat at his laptop in the kitchen while Jennifer comforted Emily in her room. He opened a search engine and typed 11:15 p.m. Pacific Time, time zone conversion, Japan. The result appeared on his screen. 11:15 p.m. Pacific Time equals 8:15 a.m. Japan Standard Time the following day. Michael's blood ran cold. He opened another search, his fingers trembling slightly as he typed Hiroshima bombing time. The answer came back instantly. August 6, 1945. 8:15 a.m. local time. Michael stared at his computer screen. His daughter woke up screaming every night at the exact moment adjusted for time zones when the atomic bomb exploded over Hiroshima. 71 years later. To the minute. Spring 2016, the drawings. The drawings started in early March. Jennifer found Emily at 5 in the morning, sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by papers. The child was drawing frantically, her small hands moving with an urgency that seemed impossible for her age. Jennifer approached slowly. Emily? Honey, what are you doing up so early? Emily didn't respond. She continued drawing, her focus absolute. Jennifer looked down at the papers scattered across the floor, and her heart stopped. Emily was drawing mushrooms, but not ordinary mushrooms. Not the kind a child might see in a forest or in a picture book. These were massive, towering, with thick stems rising up the page and dark clouds expanding at the top in the shape of an anvil. Mushroom clouds. Nuclear mushroom clouds. Dozens of them, each one more detailed than the last. Jennifer knelt down beside her daughter, trying to keep her voice calm. Emily, sweetheart, what are you drawing? Emily finally looked up at her mother, her eyes distant, haunted. What I saw in the sky, she said quietly. When the sun fell. When everything turned white and then black and then red. Jennifer felt a chill run down her spine. When did you see this, Emily? When I was Miss Yuki. Before I was Emily. I was going to school to teach the children. And then the sky exploded. Jennifer's hands were shaking. Miss Yuki? Who is Miss Yuki? Emily returned to her drawing, adding more detail to the mushroom cloud. That's me, Mommy. That's who I was before. I was a teacher. I taught little children. I was 28 years old. She paused, her crayon hovering over the paper. On the day the sky caught fire, I was taking my students to the courtyard when everything turned white. Jennifer sat down hard on the floor. Her daughter. Her 3-year-old daughter. Describing what sounded like the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. In detail. With specificity. With a sadness that belonged to someone who had been there. Over the following weeks, Emily revealed more. She described a wooden school building painted white. A courtyard with a large cherry blossom tree in the center. 23 children between ages 4 and 6 whom she taught. And she described with disturbing clarity the final moments before the explosion. Jennifer began documenting everything. Writing down every word Emily said. Every detail she shared. Every drawing she created. The notebooks filled quickly. By April, Jennifer had 3 full journals of observations. Michael read through them one evening, his face growing paler with each page. "We need to talk to someone about this," he said finally. "This isn't normal childhood imagination. This is something else." Jennifer nodded slowly. "I know. But who do we talk to? Who's going to believe us?" Michael thought for a moment. "There's a professor at Portland State. Dr. Richard Morrison. He teaches Japanese studies. He's an expert on Hiroshima. Maybe he can help us understand what's happening." Meeting Dr. Morrison. Dr. Richard Morrison agreed to meet with the Carter family in his university office. He was a man in his late 50s, with kind eyes and an air of scholarly curiosity. He had spent 30 years studying Japanese culture and history. He had seen many things in his career. But nothing had prepared him for Emily Carter. When the family entered his office, Emily immediately stopped in the middle of the room. She was staring at a photograph on the wall. A black and white image of Hiroshima before the bombing, showing a specific street in the city. "I know that street," Emily said suddenly, walking closer to the photograph. "I walked on that street every day. Mr. Tanaka's bakery was there." She pointed to a specific building. "And there was a fabric shop here where my sister worked." Dr. Morrison felt the hair on the back of his neck stand up. The Tanaka bakery had indeed existed at that exact location. It was destroyed in the blast along with everything else in that area of the city. He had studied this photograph for years. He knew every building, every street, and this 3-year-old American girl was identifying them with perfect accuracy. Dr. Morrison decided to test something. He began speaking to Emily in Japanese, and Emily responded, fluently, with perfect grammar and a Hiroshima accent from the 1940s. For 30 minutes, professor and child conversed in Japanese. Emily described her daily routine as a teacher, the path she took from home to school, the names of colleagues, the principal of the school, even what she had eaten for breakfast on that fatal morning. When the conversation ended, Dr. Morrison was pale. He turned to Jennifer and Michael, his voice shaking slightly. "She's not just speaking Japanese," he said. "She's using expressions and grammatical constructions that aren't taught anymore. This is Japanese from the 1940s. And the accent. It's specific to the Nakaku district, the central district of Hiroshima that was completely obliterated by the bomb." He paused, looking at Emily, who was now drawing quietly in a corner of his office. "A 4-year-old American girl should not be able to do this. It's impossible." Part 2. The physical evidence. It was Emily's grandmother who first noticed something that everyone else had overlooked. During a visit in June, she was helping Emily take a bath when she paused, looking at a birthmark on the left side of Emily's body. The mark extended from the shoulder down to the elbow. An irregular patch of darker skin, slightly rough to the touch. "Has this always been here?" Emily's grandmother asked. "Since she was born," Jennifer replied. "The doctor said it was just a common birthmark. Dermal melanosis. Nothing to worry about." But Emily's grandmother, a retired physician, looked at the mark more carefully. The pattern was strange. Not uniform like most birthmarks. It had a specific shape, as if something hot had touched the skin in an irregular pattern. She took a photograph and sent it to a dermatologist colleague. The response came 2 days later. The pattern of Emily's birthmark was consistent with thermal radiation burns. More specifically, with the type of burn that victims of nuclear explosions develop when objects or shadows partially protect the skin from the initial radiation. It was exactly the type of mark that thousands of Hiroshima victims developed at the moment of the blast. Michael contacted Dr. Elizabeth Chun, a professor of medical physics at Oregon Health and Science University. Dr. Chun specialized in the effects of radiation on the human body. During the examination, Dr. Chun photographed Emily's birthmark under special ultraviolet light. What she discovered was extraordinary. The skin pigmentation shows a pattern that we rarely see in common birthmarks, Dr. Chun explained to the parents. The shape suggests exposure to intense, sudden heat coming from a single point of origin. It's similar to patterns we've documented in studies of Hiroshima and Nagasaki victims. She paused, clearly disturbed. But that's impossible. Emily was born in 2012, 70 years after the bombing. There's no medical explanation for how she could have a mark that corresponds to historical radiation trauma. There was another detail that no one had noticed until then. Emily had an irrational fear of very bright lights. Not just common discomfort. True panic. Whenever she saw bright car headlights, fireworks, or even camera flashes, she would enter a state of absolute terror. She would cover her eyes with her hands, scream, cry, repeat the same words in Japanese. Pika? Pika. Not again. Not again. Pika was the word that Hiroshima survivors used to describe the initial flash of the explosion. The brightest light that human eyes could ever see. The last thing many victims saw before dying. Emily was afraid of what had killed Yuki 71 years earlier. Part 3. The decision to travel. In the summer of 2016, after months of research and documentation, Michael and Jennifer faced a difficult decision. Dr. Morrison had suggested something controversial. Take Emily to Japan, specifically to Hiroshima. If her memories are real, the professor argued, being physically at the location might bring more clarity. It might help Emily process these experiences, and it might give us definitive answers. Jennifer was hesitant. What if it makes the nightmares worse? What if it's too traumatic for her? But Emily, upon hearing about the possibility of the trip, reacted unexpectedly. I need to go, Mommy, she said, her voice anxious but determined. I need to see again. I need to know if everything is okay now. If people are happy again. There was a maturity in those words that didn't belong to a 4-year-old child. It was as if Yuki was speaking through Emily, carrying a survivor's guilt that transcended generations. In August 2016, exactly 71 years after the bombing, the Carter family boarded a flight to Tokyo. Officially, it was a vacation. An American couple introducing Japanese culture to their young daughter. No one needed to know the real reason. But Michael documented everything in his journal. Every reaction from Emily. Every word she would say. Every place she would recognize. During the flight, Emily was quiet. She looked out the window, watching the Pacific Ocean pass below. Then suddenly, she turned to her parents with tears in her eyes. Yuki never was on an airplane, she said sadly and confused. She never left Hiroshima. She always wanted to see the real ocean, not just the river. But she never had the chance. She paused, looking out the window again. Do you think she knows I'm here now? Do you think she's happy that I can see the things she never saw? Jennifer hugged her daughter, trying to hold back her own tears. There were no adequate words for that moment. How do you comfort a child who carries memories of a life she never lived? How do you explain death and rebirth to someone so young? There was no manual for this. They were navigating completely unknown territory. Part 4. Arrival in Hiroshima, the recognition. The family spent 2 days in Tokyo, acclimating to the time zone and culture. Emily was fascinated by everything. The lights, the sounds, the food, the people. She was an American child discovering a new country, marveling at every detail. But when they boarded the bullet train to Hiroshima, something changed in Emily. She became quiet, thoughtful. Her small hands gripped the teddy bear she had brought. Are you okay, sweetie? Jennifer asked, touching her daughter's face. I'm getting close, Emily whispered. I can feel it. Yuki feels it. Everything is different, but I remember. It's underneath. The old city is underneath the new one. When the train arrived at Hiroshima Station, Emily stopped on the platform. Her eyes filled with tears. For a long minute she just stood there looking around. Then, to her parents' surprise, she began to walk. She didn't ask where to go. She didn't hesitate. She simply started walking toward the east exit. "Emily, wait. Where are you going?" Michael followed her quickly. "I know the way, Daddy. It's this way." They exited the station and Emily continued walking. She turned left, then right. Each corner with confidence, as if following a mental map that only she could see. Michael checked the GPS on his phone. Emily was walking toward the Peace Memorial Park. But the path she was choosing wasn't the main tourist route. It was a specific sequence of streets that, according to what Michael would discover later, corresponded exactly to the path that teachers took from the station to the district schools before 1945. After 15 minutes of walking, Emily stopped abruptly in front of a modern apartment building. She looked up then down, disoriented. Here was the school, her voice confused and emotional. "My school. With the cherry tree in the courtyard. Where is it? Where is everything?" Michael checked the address. He consulted historical maps he had downloaded. His heart raced. Emily was standing exactly where, according to municipal records, an elementary school had existed before the bombing. The school was completely destroyed. The land remained empty for decades until, in the 1970s, the apartment building was constructed. There was no plaque, no memorial, nothing to indicate that a school had existed there. It was just another building in a rebuilt city. But Emily knew. They walked to the Peace Memorial Park. Emily was quiet, absorbing every detail. When they reached the Memorial Museum, Michael and Jennifer hesitated. "Maybe it's too much for her," Jennifer whispered. "The images are very heavy." "I need to see, Mommy," Emily said calmly and maturely. "Yuki needs to see what happened after she fell asleep. I need to know that people survived." Inside the museum, Emily looked at every photograph, every object, every explanatory panel. There were tears in her eyes, but she didn't look away. Then, in a section of the museum dedicated to teachers who died protecting students, Emily stopped. She froze completely. On the wall was a photograph. A grainy black and white photograph of a group of teachers in front of a school. The date, May 1945. 3 months before the bombing. Emily pointed to a young woman in the second row. Hair pulled back in a bun, simple kimono, gentle smile. "That's me," she whispered, trembling. "That was me. Yuki." Michael read the descriptive plaque below the photograph. It was in Japanese, but he used a translation app on his cell phone. Teachers of Honkawa Elementary School. This school was located 400 meters from the hypocenter of the explosion. All 10 teachers and 400 students present died instantly, or in the following hours. Among them was Yuki Nakamura, 28 years old, first grade teacher. Total silence. 5 full seconds of absolute silence. Part 5. The Final Discovery. Michael requested permission from the museum administration to photograph the plaque in more detail. He explained briefly his daughter's situation. The curator, a 70-year-old Japanese woman named Mrs. Kimura, listened in silence. Then she did something unexpected. She took the family to an archive room in the back of the museum. "We have personal documents from some victims," Mrs. Kimura explained in careful English. "Donated by families. Not everything is on display. If your daughter really was Yuki Nakamura, perhaps she can recognize something." Mrs. Kimura opened a file box. Inside were preserved documents. A diary. Some photographs. A cloth bag. Emily looked at the objects. Her small hands touched the diary with reverence. "I remember this," she said emotionally. "I used to write at night, before sleeping. About the students. About the day. About." She opened the diary to the last written page. The date, August 5, 1945. The day before the bombing. Emily couldn't read the Japanese characters. She was only 4 years old, and had never studied Japanese writing. But she ran her fingers over the words, as if she could feel the memory through touch. Mrs. Kimura read the last entry aloud, translating to English. Her voice emotional, reading slowly. "Tomorrow will be a beautiful day. I heard on the radio that the weather will be clear and warm. Perfect for taking the children to the courtyard in the morning, before it gets too hot. I will teach the cherry blossom song that my grandmother taught me. They will love it. I hope this summer ends soon and the war ends. I want my students to grow up in a world of peace. Long pause. 5 seconds of deeply emotional silence. Tears fell freely now. From Emily. From Jennifer. From Mrs. Kimura. Even Michael had moist eyes. Emily held the diary against her chest and said, in perfect Japanese, something that made Mrs. Kimura bring her hand to her mouth. Emily's voice in Japanese, translated as subtitle, I never got to sing the song to them. The sky exploded before. But I thought about them until the end. I tried to protect them, but I couldn't. Will they forgive me? Mrs. Kimura knelt in front of Emily and held her small hands. Mrs. Kimura's voice in Japanese then translated. Yuki-sensei, you did everything you could. You don't need to carry this guilt. The children know. Your students know. And I know because I was one of them. Complete silence in the room. Long pause. For seconds. Mrs. Kimura continued, with tears streaming. I was Keiko Kimura. I was 5 years old. I was sick that day. My mother didn't let me go to school. I was one of your students. You were always kind to me. You taught me to write my name. Emotional pause. I survived because I wasn't there. But all my friends, all my classmates, and you, sensei, all of you were gone. For 71 years, I carried the guilt of having survived when they didn't. Emily, or Yuki, in that moment it was impossible to say who was really present, hugged Mrs. Kimura. 2 Hiroshima survivors. One who survived physically, another who survived through rebirth. Both carrying the same guilt. Both finally finding forgiveness. There was no scientific explanation for this. No theory that could encompass what had just happened. It was impossible. But it was real. Part 6. After the journey. The Carter family returned to the United States 3 weeks later. Emily brought with her a photograph of Yuki Nakamura's class, kindly provided by the museum. She keeps it in a special box next to her bed. The nightmares stopped after the trip to Hiroshima. Emily sleeps peacefully now. The memories of Yuki are gradually fading, as usually happens with children who report past lives. At 8 years old, Emily only remembers feelings and blurred images. But something remained. Emily developed a deep love for Japanese culture. She's formally learning Japanese now at school. She wants to become a teacher when she grows up, just as Yuki was. Mrs. Kimura and the Carter family stay in touch. Every year, on August 6th, Emily sends flowers to the memorial in Hiroshima. And Mrs. Kimura, now 76 years old, says she has finally found peace. Knowing that Yuki-sensei came back somehow, she wrote in a letter, makes me believe that those we lost aren't gone forever. That there are things in this universe that transcend death and time. And that the love and dedication my teacher had for her students continue alive. Somehow through Emily. Emily Carter's case remains one of the most well-documented examples of past life memory. Dr. Morrison published a detailed study about the case, which was peer-reviewed and published in the Journal of Consciousness Studies. The questions remain. How can a 4-year-old American girl speak fluent Japanese without ever learning it? How can she have a birthmark corresponding to radiation trauma from 70 years earlier? How can she recognize places and people she never saw in this life? Science has no answers. Only documentation. Only mystery. But perhaps the answer doesn't matter as much as the message. Yuki Nakamura dedicated her short life to protecting and educating children. She died trying to save them on one of the darkest days in human history. And now somehow, through Emily, she had a second chance. A chance to see the world at peace that she wished for on that last night before the explosion. A chance to grow, to learn, to love. A chance to sing the cherry blossom song that she never had time to teach. This is my other life. Where trauma becomes memory. Where nuclear fire becomes understanding. Where a 4-year-old girl remembers being a teacher who thought about her students until her last breath. Where a mother watches her daughter remember the city that burned 71 years ago. And learns that some souls are bound together by threads that neither time nor death can break. If you or someone you know has experienced memories that don't belong to this lifetime, share your story with us. Because somewhere, someone else is carrying memories of the past, waiting for someone to finally understand. This is the story of Emily Carter, The girl who dreamed of a sky on fire. The girl who remembered Hiroshima. The girl who proved that some memories are too powerful to die. And some souls are too dedicated to forget those they tried to save.